Hello, everybody. Welcome to Chin Fat. Today, what I'm doing is starting a new little series that's going to be kind of going through the entire filmmaking process from beginning to end. And when that starts with basically story ideas, we're going to get into screenwriting here pretty quick. But on this little episode here, we're going to talk a little bit about where stories come from and how to come up with a story that would be good to tell on the screen. First of all, what I did here is to promote my channel. Is I've got some little doggy treats here. Come on. And I've got a big dog that's going to sit here and keep me company while we talk about where stories come from. Where do stories come from? Speak. There you go. That's where stories come from the doggy's mouth. All right, so let's get started. So story ideas. Where do stories come from? They come from the deep, dark recesses of a very disturbed mind. Where do they come from? First of all, I love this little Calvin and Hobbes comic here, where you got Hobbes asking Calvin, do you have an idea for your story yet? And he says, no, I'm waiting for inspiration. And he says, you can't just turn on creativity like a faucet. You have to be in the right mood. Hobbes says, well, what mood is that? And Calvin says, last minute panic. Yeah. So sometimes with a little bit of pressure, if you got a deadline, I think that can kind of force a little bit of creativity. But moving on here, story ideas literally come from anywhere and everywhere. You can write them down and save them. But the best thing to do is write the story. So one thing I really recommend to people, and this is what I do as well, when I'm trying to come up with ideas, if I come up with a story idea, anytime I come up with just anything interesting, I'd make like a Google Doc and I will put it on, and I'll get on my phone and I'll just write it down. Anytime you come up with ideas, even if you have to write them down on a napkin or whatever, then copy them into a Google Doc later on or something like that. I keep track of all my ideas, small, big ideas, on a Google Doc sheet. Mark Twain is a shining example. His idea for Huckleberry Finn wasn't an idea at all. He simply based the character on someone he knew from real life. So, I mean, even if you know interesting people and the people who have lived interesting lives, you can come up with, maybe get some stories from them and come up with some story ideas that might adapt well to the screen. So even if you know interesting people, or you see interesting people in the news, or just like characters out there in real life, they might have some interesting stories that you can kind of take from them as well. If you do take somebody's story, sometimes you might want to ask permission if it's gonna keep that character very true to life, so they don't get angry for you making a movie about them without their permission. Here's a quote from Mark Twain. In Huckleberry Finn, I've drawn from Tom Blankenship exactly as he was. He was ignorant, unwashed, insufficiently fed, but he had as good a heart as ever any boy had. His liberties were totally unrestricted. He was the only real independent person, boy or man, in the community. And by consequence, he was tranquilly and continuously happy and envied by the rest of us. So this is an interesting character here, somebody that's just like ignorant, unwashed, insufficiently fed, but has a great heart. Just calling him like the only free person, it's like this is somebody that's envied by the rest of us, and then therefore makes this an interesting character. So that's one thing you got to do, is you got to come up with an interesting character that is not like everybody else that you know. Previous works, you can, for some reason, film is, when it comes to writing stories for the screen, oftentimes plagiarism is okay to a degree. Now hear me out. Previous works, things that are in the public domain, especially the classics, things that go back like on up to a couple thousand years or more. Stories like the Odyssey, the Iliad is obviously up for grabs that you can take and adapt to a movie idea. He's about a con artist posing as a holy man that gets taken in by a wealthy family. All he really wants to do is sleep with the Lord's wife and steal something. This has been done over and over again in movies. This concept has been taken. Down and Out in Beverly Hills. Goethe's Faust is another one here. The tale of a doctor that sells his soul to the devil for knowledge, youth, and magic powers. This is a movie that's been told over and over again in stories. Interview with a Vampire uses this concept. The Devil's Advocate uses this concept as well. Jane Austen's Emma, something that goes back just over a couple hundred years ago, that is in the public domain, and this has been done as a movie a few times. A popular girl spends her days playing matchmaker, helping friends with advice, advising a new girl at school, and looking for a new boyfriend. This is basically Clueless. And there have been several other versions that have actually been called Emma, that use the actual title Emma for their film. Several movies have been drawn from the works of Shakespeare. Some that have been loosely based off of Shakespeare stories, like West Side Story basically was using the concept of Romeo and Juliet. Ran by Kurosawa is basically King Lear, and Lion King was basically Hamlet. And there have been several movies that have just been direct, just Shakespeare, full-on Shakespeare movies, as if it's a play turned cinema. And Kenneth Branagh has directed several of those. He directed a version of Hamlet, Much Ado About Nothing, and several others that he's been involved with. So, 10 Things That I Hate About You, basically The Taming of the Shrew. Some places you can draw on for ideas as well. News articles, magazine articles, science and technology articles. Come up with interesting concepts. Jurassic Park was loosely based on real events that were happening with cloning, and it kind of presents the dangers of the extreme dangers of cloning, of bringing back creatures from the past. Dog Day Afternoon, The Insider, Almost Famous, things that have based off of things that you see in the news. Radio, Shattered Glass. But yeah, as I mentioned, Jurassic Park movies based on science and technology news. Jurassic Park, The Eye, kind of loosely based off of the current a horror film based off of transplant technology. Multiplicity, based off of cloning, essentially. And Outbreak, something that with the pandemic, we saw something. With the pandemic, we saw kind of a similar situation to which we saw in the movie Outbreak. Other places, internets, photographs. Sometimes people just get ideas by looking at photographs, song lyrics, dreams, poems, a whole bunch of different places you can kind of come up with story concepts from. Psychology books, live events, etc. One thing that I found recently, I'm sure a lot of people know about this, but there's the OpenAI website that has a chat feature. And the chat feature actually has some sort of story generating capabilities as well. In fact, let's go take a look at that really quick. So OpenAI.com here. If you go up to try here on the introducing ChatGPT here and try, you have to make a login for this, and it needs your phone number, it sends you a text and everything to get you connected, and it needs an email address to get you signed in. If you come up with like a concept for a horror film or something like that, let's say, so within the AI here, I'm going to write a little message. I'm going to say, write a horror story with a twist at the end. Let's see what this does. Hit return, and it starts writing immediately. All right, so now this is through generating, and it's generated quite a story here. It's generated a story about a girl, Emily, that's walking home, and she sees some sort of grotesque creature that attacks her, and then she wakes up in some sort of cell, in a long, dark hallway, and then she ends up finding out that she's part of like this, they end up saying, you've been part of the secret government experiment. The creature you saw was actually a genetically engineered being designed to be the ultimate soldier. This has gone way off the rails here, but something went wrong, and it became distorted. We're sorry that you've been through what you've been through, but we need your help. We believe that you may be the key to fixing the creature and creating the perfect weapon. So wow, that's quite a concept there. I was just hoping for a little bit of a horror film, but this is like some big feature-length film concept. So interesting. But yeah, this is one of the way that you guys can come up with ideas. There are story generators online. This is an artificial intelligence one that actually does a pretty good job. At least coming up with some sort of concepts, and you can start typing in just crazy stuff for this and see what you get. All right, so the next question is, what do you do after you have a story concept? Well, the next thing you got to do is structure. We're going to start talking about story structure. The next episode, we'll start talking about the resources that you have at your fingertips with screenwriting and the basics of screenwriting. And then we'll get a little bit more. We'll have several episodes on screenwriting, maybe 3 or 4 of these, and then we will start getting into the pre-production of filmmaking. So if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. And thanks for watching Chin Fat. Where'd my dog go? I'm all alone again.